Okay, hey everyone, it's Chris from ChrisBeatCancer.com, chemo-free survivor since 2003, and my guest today is Prudence Sinclair. Her journey began in 1984. When doctors gave her 6 months to live, she had stage 4 melanoma. And she's alive and well today. She refused chemotherapy, had some surgery, and then basically traveled halfway around the world researching alternative therapies and took control of her life and figured out how to get well. So I'm super excited to talk to you and share your story. Thanks for doing this.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Chris. This is great. Wonderful to meet a fellow survivor.
It's wonderful to meet you. So let's start with your story.
Okay, many years ago now, but still, something that we need to get out there today. Basically, I was diagnosed with stage 4 malignant melanoma and rushed immediately to the hospital without even a thought, that there may be something else that I could be doing. So within 24 hours, I was operated on, and my doctor said to me, if you wake up with both your legs bandaged, you have a very serious malignant melanoma. So you're going under surgery, under anesthetic, thinking these, wild thoughts. So apparently when I came out, I was not very good. Apparently I freaked out and was screaming because obviously when you come out of these situations, you remember, and I put my hands on my thighs and realized that both my legs were bandaged. So the next day, the doctor came in to tell me that I had stage 4 malignant melanoma.
And how old were you then? Obviously, you were young.
I was 25, 26. Okay. Yeah. So what happened then was I was on my stomach in the hospital because it was the back of my thigh. And actually, the donor side was more painful than the actual surgery side because they had taken skin grafts. So I was on my stomach, and then unfortunately I got a nasty staph infection. So I was in the hospital for over a month.
Which is very common.
Yeah, very
common. Secondary infections are very common in the hospital for cancer or anything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Stay for the hospitals.
They're a major killer. The major killer are secondary infections for cancer patients.
I was on a reserve antibiotic back then, but it just took so long to heal. And eventually I got home, and a year later, I'd been going to my doctor every 3 months for checkups, and he said, just keep checking in on the groin because that's where it would spread next. And unfortunately, it did spread to the lymphatic system. So that's when my doctor gave me 6 months to live and to put my affairs in order. And then I was 26 years of age.
What was going through your mind?
Oh, absolute fear. Panic, just, oh my God, I'm going to die. And I actually didn't want to be a burden. I was married at the time. I'd only been married for 2 years. And my husband worked on an oil rig as an engineer in the South China Sea. So he was home 1 month and then gone the next.
Oh, wow.
So I was on my own most of the time. And I seriously had thoughts of getting some cyanide pills and finishing it off. Because I just didn't want to be a burden on him. I was a mess.
Yeah.
An absolute mess.
Well, a cancer diagnosis is so traumatic, obviously. I mean, it can induce depression and tons of fear and anxiety, of course, which leads to depression. And it's amazing how similar our stories were. We were both 26.
Yeah.
We were both newlyweds, been married for 2 years.
Yeah.
Okay, so you were feeling suicidal?
Yeah, absolutely. And then I snapped out of it due to the fact, and it's really interesting how, when I look back now, how Spirit put everything in place for me. Because I had recently done a course called Psycho-Cybernetics. And that is really an amazing mind-body connection course. And I'd recently done that, and I'd also trained and got my massage diploma. So I was already thinking this way. So a friend of mine took me to a cancer support group. And there I met a man who was very, very interesting. And he said, Prue, there are alternatives. You should look into this. And I said, interesting you say that, because when I was in the hospital, my chiropractor came in to see me because I was lying on my stomach and my back was really painful. And he said to me, I just got a paper. He went to Palmer over here in the US. And he said, I just got a paper on apricot kernels. It's something you should look into. He said, I really don't know anything about it, but look into it. So when I got home and started managing to walk again because of my legs bandaged and the donor side, what I ended up doing was going to the local library. There was no internet back then.
Let me just interrupt. Me neither. Me neither. I was only 10 years ago. It was 2004, and there was an internet, but I didn't get any information from the internet. I mean, the internet was so janky, and there was barely any information about healing cancer on the internet. And the sites that were out there were very kind of suspicious looking and homemade. I mean, they just, so I was just like you. Everything I learned from books.
Yeah, from books and from the library, and it's just staggering what I learned. So when I went back to my doctor, he said, you are going to go on chemotherapy, megadoses of chemotherapy, and you may lose your leg. And I said, no, I'm not. And he said, well, yes, you are, otherwise you're going to die. And I said, well, I've been reading up about the Louis Pasteur Clinic in France and the Hans Neiper Clinic and other clinics in Mexico, and there are alternatives. It's the apricot kernel, Laetrile, which boosts the immune system. So I'm going to go that route. He said, you're crazy. And he started panicking. He said, you've lost your mind, Prue. And I booked the ticket, and I was on my way, and all my friends came to the airport to see me off, and it was a very emotional time because I really was like, oh, my God, I'm on my own here. But I made this decision, and this is the route I wanted to go.
And what did your husband think? What was his...
Oh, he thought I was crazy, but he went along with it.
Well, my wife thought I was crazy and went along with it too. So,
and he actually thought it turned into some kind of witch by doing this mind-body course, psychocybernetics. So it was all way beyond him being an engineer.
I understand.
But wonderful lessons for him too, which I can get into later on. But what happened was I took off to Mexico. So I went to the had the Laetrile treatment and the vitamin C treatment and all sorts of stuff in Mexico.
Can we talk about that a little bit?
Sure. But what was really interesting was my doctor actually called my husband and called my mother in New Zealand and told them I was going to die in Mexico. So, really nice of him to do that.
Your Australian doctor?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. That's, wonderful man, sounds like.
Wonderful stuff. So anyway, I landed in Mexico and walked across rubble to get into this brand new clinic that had just been opened up. Dr. Rodrigo Rodriguez was running it, who used to work with Contreras.
I've met him.
Yes, you mentioned that. Anyway, I walked in there and things changed. My state of mind changed. There was hope. I didn't care what was going on there. There was hope. And I met this wonderful woman who had the same disease I had in the lymph nodes, and she was there with her husband. So they really took care of me, and we became great friends. But the hope from the doctors, and they gave me a questionnaire which was 450 questions, all about me. Nothing to do about, my diagnosis, about me personally. And, why I thought I had got to this point in my life.
Yeah.
And it really made me think that they really cared. And I had nightmares while I was there. It was very fearful being on my own. And my doctor just talked me through those nightmares and talked to me about my mind and how my mind is very powerful over my body. Mm-hmm. And even though they were giving me all these wonderful vitamin therapies, it wasn't the cure. The cure was within me. And that's what I've learned more and more over the last 25 years, is it's not really the medicine, you choose the medicine that you want. And if you love that medicine, miraculous things happen. It doesn't matter whether you go to Lourdes, whether you just stay home and drink juices. If you really decide that this is something that you believe in, truly believe in, it's going to work. There's no doubt about it.
It makes a lot of sense, and I can't disagree with you because I've seen people get well doing all kinds of things, right? I mean, when someone chooses, there are obviously common threads, you know what I mean?
Yeah, there are.
Choosing a route that is where you know deep down you're taking care of yourself. You're nourishing your body. You're giving your body good things and not bad things. You're giving your body things that promote health. Plays a big part in the process.
And when I think back, I was not nourishing my body. I don't think any of us are in those years. There's nightclubs, there's fun, there's parties, we don't think about that. And then there's, the Australian sun, which really doesn't help matters with malignant melanoma, the amount of sun that we do get down there. However, that is something that is important, but it's also not the real cause. Your immune system has weakened due to lots of aspects.
Yeah.
And you see, I've looked at all sorts of common denominators over the years, and I lost my dad tragically, only 3 years actually, before I got my cancer.
Yeah.
And I was an only child, and he was my rock. And Dad was tragically killed by a 17-year-old drunk driver.
Wow.
So my world went into a tailspin, and I never really got over that.
And that's very common for cancer patients to have a significant traumatic trigger in their life, right?
Very common, and Bernie Siegel mentions that in his books, and I've been very fortunate to meet him recently because he was the first cassette tape that I listened to on meditation. Mm-hmm. So I went down to meet him recently in Connecticut, and it was just an honor to meet him and be with him and actually hear him live right next to me doing a meditation. It was definitely an aha moment.
I understand.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's talk about the therapies you did there, even though I know the point you're making is that it's not just about the therapies. But people watching, I'm sure, are curious to know. So yes. It sounds like you did vitamin C IVs, right?
Yes, vitamin C IVs and multiple vitamins, the dioxychlor, and also the Laetrile.
Laetrile IV?
Yes, Laetrile IV, yep. And the chelation therapy.
Mm-hmm. And what did they do? What dietary changes did you make?
The clinic was not that strict at the time on diet. However, they did have, all vegetables, some chicken, some fish. I felt for me, I needed to do more than that, but everybody has a choice,
sure.
Of what they feel is going to nourish their body. But I think the clinic gives out wonderful food, but just for me, when I got home, I felt that raw foods and very little food was going to help me. And I met this wonderful lady that had cured herself of liver cancer. And I went to see her every week. And I stayed on a very regimented, strict program of juicing and basically counted out 12 almonds every day with avocados and salads. It was a very strict program and not for everybody, but it just made me feel good. I actually started running back then. I'd run my dog, and I got up to 5 miles a day. I meditated for 3 to 4 hours a day. I had my regiment. And I believe and know that this is so important, especially when you get home from these clinics, or even if you have chemotherapy. No matter what route you go or what hospital you go to, when you get home, it's a different story.
That's right.
You're all on your own. And this is when a lot of people fail.
Yes.
And it's really important to have yourself find a good health coach or somebody like you and I who have been through this, who can really help people stick to their program. Because I know this woman really helped me, and I'd go and see her every week. And it just helped me keep in alignment. But I also had my day-to-day program that I set up, and I stuck to it through thick and thin. And then when my husband came home, I'd be making him a different meal from me until I could slowly get him more onto a vegan type food.
Well, again, more similarities between us because I was juicing 64 ounces of mostly carrot juice every day, a little bit of beet, celery, ginger root. In the first 90 days was a very strict raw vegan diet, and then added a little bit more cooked food because I just needed more calories. I have a very high metabolism.
Right.
But kept it plant-based. Yep. Right. Very, very little animal protein and some cooked food.
Yep.
But we did very similar things.
We sure did.
Very similar things, and I love hearing that. It's wonderful because I think those common threads are so important. Now, you mentioned something that I think is really I don't want to let this get away from us. When we're talking about clinics, clinics can be very beneficial, right?
Yes.
But it's really important what happens after the patient goes home, because very rarely does a clinic ever cure someone, right?
Right. And it's difficult to use the word cure. I mean, in Orthodox medicine, they say, I ran seminars and got on my soapbox and became quite an activist for this in my 20s and 30s in Australia. And we did TV shows and talkback shows. And, I really tried to help a lot of people. But the key to this is, if allopathic says, come back and see me, Prue, in 5 years, 1 day, and I didn't, and I'm alive 25, 28 years later. Is that a cure? Yes, it is a cure in my mind. But we put these stringent rules on cure and on remission that really don't need to be there. I believe that the person inside, in their being, knows when they are well. I mean, you know that too. You know that you've got a grip on this, and you know where to go back to when you have an inkling that your health is not where it used to be.
That's right. If you're honest with yourself, if you really are honest with yourself, you know when things are not right.
Yes.
And when they are. And, I've talked to countless patients, but many of them, almost all of them will say, I knew something wasn't right, even before they knew they had cancer, right? They knew something wasn't right.
Yes. And I think that's very important, that if we can prevent cancer, it's teaching people this knowing that you and I know of when is enough. When is enough? What is the pain going to be for you to stop doing what you're doing and nourish your body? What is it going to take? When a doctor tells you you've got diabetes, isn't that enough for you to say, well, maybe I can look at my overall health because I don't want cancer, I don't want anything else. Maybe you go to your doctor and you've got some digestive issues. That is a sign that something is going on. These are all signs. When it happens in the physical body, it's happened well before then in your mind.
That's right. Well, it's interesting that you brought up diabetes because diabetics have a much worse survival rate of cancer.
Yes.
Yeah.
And, diabetes, too, is preventable through diet.
Yes.
We have created this disease.
Preventable and reversible.
And reversible.
Yeah, I mean, especially type 2. Type 1 is more difficult if you're born with it. But, yeah, type 2, absolutely. It's a Western disease. It's caused by a Western diet and lifestyle.
Absolutely. And so let food be thy medicine. I mean, let's go back to Hippocrates. Really and truly, if we don't understand that now, we never will. America, unfortunately, has had the worst food ever. I remember when I first came to live here, I'm like, you have got to be kidding me. Everything is so sweet.
Hey, let me just push back. Australia's cancer rates are just as bad.
Well, they are now because McDonald's and everything went down there.
That's right.
And now China's bad too.
Yeah.
I know, I can't really blame America. But the fact of the matter is, the palate here is too sweet.
Mm.
I think Americans are totally addicted to sugar, and it's very difficult to get you off it.
Processed sugar.
Yeah, we were sort of brought up on Vegemite, and you guys were brought up on peanut butter and jelly.
Yeah. Yeah, big difference. I still can't eat Vegemite. I've tried.
It's not for everybody.
And I eat all kinds of crazy stuff.
Quiet taste.
Yeah. So talk to me about what happened after you. So you came home, went to the clinic, right? And let me just, to finish our little clinic talk.
Yes.
Clinics can be very beneficial. Very beneficial because they can reset your attitude, your perspective. They can give you a jump start. Absolutely. The therapies you get there can. I mean, I know people that run clinics and interview them, and they're seeing patients. They're seeing their tumor shrink. They're seeing them get out of wheelchair. I mean, they're seeing amazing things happen.
I've seen it too.
But
absolutely.
But the critical thing is after you're not going to get cured in 3 weeks, right?
No.
At a clinic. You're going to get a jump start. And assuming you didn't go, gosh, we could rabbit trail on this forever, but I'm trying to keep it really tight.
Right.
Assuming that you don't go to the clinic when you're half dead,
Right.
Because sometimes people, it's their last resort and they go to Mexico or Germany or somewhere. And really, they're at the point of no return, And that's a big challenge, unfortunately. It makes it very difficult which to run a clinic like that. And you've done it, so I'm sure you've seen this.
Absolutely.
People you can't help. They're just too far gone.
And there was a certain time in Australia when we were doing the testing and everything where I just went, I can't send this person overseas because he's not going to make it or she's not going to make it. Mm-hmm. It's not fair to have that travel and, all that time to go over there. And it is expensive, but nowhere near as expensive as chemotherapy. But, what I believe the clinics are really good at is changing your state. And you have to leave your environment and go somewhere else, which is really good for your psyche.
Yes.
And also, the other thing that's good is you get a kickstart, as you said.
Yep.
And some of the products, either Laetrile or the food, it gives your body time to start the healing process.
Yeah.
So you're filled with all this wondrous goodness and nourishment, and then you take that home. And you better stick to it.
Yeah. Well, and you better come home and change your life, too.
You better.
Not only sticking to it, right? Because sometimes what I've seen, and feel free to disagree with me, but what I see is people that are living in a very stressful home environment, work environment, social environment, right? Yes. And, of course, they're not taking care of themselves, and they get cancer, and they go to the clinic, and it's like all that stress is gone. It all dissipates, right? It's like being on a vacation. And they really they think better, they're happier, they're getting better, they're taking care of themselves, they're getting these therapies, they're eating good food, they're juicing, like doing all these wonderful things. But then they go back to that environment that was so toxic, right? And so stressful. And the real challenge is not only sticking to the protocol, but you can't go back to living the way you were living. And back into those really super stressful situations, whatever they are, and not expect them to affect you in the same way they were before, which is in a negative way.
Yeah, Chris, this is so true. And this is where you and I come in, where we can help people when they've been to these clinics. Because I don't think they realize, some people, that the change is quite horrendous. Because if you don't change and you go back to that stressful life again, unfortunately, you'll go back to where you were.
Yeah.
And I have a sad story about that. And this was the woman that I met at the clinic, Melanie. She had the same disease as I had. Mm-hmm. And we kept in contact. I actually went to stay with her after the clinic, and we stayed on our juices. And then I went home to Australia, and we kept writing to each other. No email back then.
Oh, yeah. Pen pals.
Pen pals. And then we were supposed to meet at the clinic 6 months later for a booster shot. And unfortunately, Melanie died. And this was really tough for me. And I was devastated because I thought I was going to be next.
Yeah.
And I lost faith in the treatments that I had been on. And I remember my doctors saying, because I was in Mexico, I said, I'm going to fly up to the funeral. And my doctor said, no, not a good idea. We really believe you need to stay here and have more treatment, and let's talk about this, and let's work this out. So for me, losing Melanie was just devastating. And, we just can't cure everybody.
Was there a difference between that you could perceive between maybe your attitude and her attitude, and what you did when you went home versus what she did?
Yes. And she went back to her normal life, and she was an A-plus personality like I was, and she became, very busy doing other things. But, I mean, who knows?
Yeah.
That's the only sort of thing I can say to justify it if I have to.
Mm-hmm.
Is I did take a very strict route.
Yes.
Very strict route. And my meditations got more and more, because when I was in my meditations, I didn't have cancer. So I loved to be an alpha. That's when I created and had my intention of being well. And the more I did it, the better I got, the better I felt. And then the huge golf balls that were huge in my groin disappeared. And I went, oh my God, I'm getting somewhere. This is working. So, I mean, the meditations were really key to center me. And that's when I didn't have my crazy brain going, oh my God, and that weight on your shoulders. Oh my God, I got cancer, I got cancer, I got cancer.
Right.
When I'm meditating, I'm free. I don't have cancer. I'm looking forward to my future, to my wonderful, healthy future.
Prayer and meditation was a big part of my journey as well.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And just to talk about your friend Melanie again, just as an example, but her story is similar to some that I certainly know, and that is when people get busy, they want to get back to normal, right?
Of course.
They want to get back to normal, and but because back to normal means forgetting about cancer, right? Busying yourself and trying to get on with your life, so to speak. But yeah. I think what ends up happening is they really don't get to the root cause of their disease, of their problem and stress. They may be doing all the right things, right? They may be juicing, they may be eating a very super healthy diet and supplementing and doing all the right things.
Yeah.
But I believe that stress and emotions account for at least 60% of health.
Oh, yes.
But it might be 90%.
It might be.
But it's more than the physical, right?
It comes out of the physical later. So we create this emotional stress in our lives. And who knows how it's going to come out in our physical life.
Yeah.
If
you don't deal with the mental, spiritual, emotional stuff, it will outweigh the physical, won't it?
Yeah, this is why, when I give talks, these days, it's about mindfulness. And I think we need to really up the ante on this in our society. Is don't be robotic. Don't just get in that car and drive to work the same route every day. Drive a different route. Change your mindset. Become mindful. Sit for 5 minutes a day and just breathe. Breathe in, breathe out. We're just too robotic. And the stresses and strains that are on us. I mean, I've spent 15 years in HR startups here in Boston. And I tell you, most of the people that work in those startups are 20 and 30 years of age. And we're doing 16-hour days. They don't have time to themselves. And being head of HR for these companies, I really had issues about how much stress was put onto these kids. And then, you've got the venture firms saying, it's all about the almighty dollar. Snooze, you lose. They don't turn up, they're out of here. So, I mean, it's just trying to get a common denominator and something that's healthy now in corporations.
Yeah.
It's really, really important. And it's not just paying for their health care. It's really looking at them as individuals and finding where they shine and how to make them shine so they love their job and they love coming to work.
That's
and
right.
I think we're just going through this whole new revolution of that, of mindfulness in corporations and mindfulness in your day-to-day life. I still catch myself when I'm not being mindful, but I've learned some triggers, and I think that's what's really important. It's like, uh-oh, Prue, hello, pay attention.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's even just like catching yourself thinking negatively and critically and, entertaining negative thoughts and emotions. When you catch yourself, and that's something I'm constantly talking to people about, coaching people about, is taking every thought captive, like catching, interrupting the negative thoughts that are running on a loop in your mind.
And I say to people, if you've got this crazy mind and it keeps coming, hit the delete button. Just hit it in your mind. And people go, huh? And it's this interaction of changing the pattern of thought.
Yeah.
It's really, really important.
Yep, it is. And you choose. What we don't realize is so many of us are driven by our emotions.
Yeah.
We're driven by our emotions, and we let our emotions drive us, whereas we don't have to. So in other words, if you have a bad feeling about a person, right, and that bad feeling, whether it's jealousy or envy or bitterness or resentment towards a person that's hurt you in your life, if that, every time you think of them, if that emotion drives your impression of them, then it's going to continue to be negative. It's always going to be negative and sour and bitter. But you can also say, wait a minute, you know what? I'm not going to think that way about them. You know what? They're a good person. They're doing their best. They've got their own problems, and I'm just going to let that go. Right?
Yeah.
I'm just not going to hold it against them. I'm going to forgive them.
Yes. I have a meditation on my website just for that, the meditation of forgiveness. And
Forgive.
Also look at what's going on with you. I mean, people are a reflection of you. So if you really have this jealousy and envy for that person, ask yourself why.
I know.
And that's a biggie for a lot of people.
It's so important. It's like, wait a minute. Why am I jealous of them?
Where is this coming from?
Yeah. Why am I envious? Why am I jealous?
Why? Reflection of you.
Why do they put me in a bad mood? Yeah. You need to be honest with yourself.
Yeah.
And then you realize, you know what? I'm jealous of them for a stupid reason. I'm being petty, and I need to be thankful for what I have and forget about the fact that they have a nicer whatever it is.
Right. Bigger car, bigger house, big deal.
Yeah.
That's
Count
not
your blessings, right?
It's not what's important.
What is it that every cancer patient needs to know when they're diagnosed? What's the first thing they need to know? Because I like to ask every survivor this. They're first diagnosed. If I came to you and said, I was just diagnosed, I don't know anything.
Well, I think from my standpoint, I tell them not to panic because I panicked. And I was uneducated. I didn't know what melanoma was. I'd never heard the word in my life. And, that was nearly 30 years ago. So today I say, look, it's a wake-up call of the highest magnitude, cancer. So let's look at it. Let's look at that. Let's look at, the wake-up call. Why is this a wake-up call? What's been going on in your life recently? What's been going on in your life in the last 5 years? Look at the common denominators and try to work with them and their doctor. And this is something that, I'm getting on my soapbox again about.
That's okay.
Is the medical practitioners and trying to educate them and help them to understand that the mind-body medicine is not woo-woo anymore. My aha moment was about 10 years ago when I read the Noetic Society had done a study on 1,000 cancer patients that were so-called spontaneous remission.
Yeah, the Spontaneous Remission Project, yeah.
Right, and you understand this. And there was, common denominators with these patients, and you and I have got those common denominators.
That's right.
So I go over those common denominators with these people and just make them think,
Yeah.
Why they are here, the what, when, why of where they are at right now. And if they can take a chance to look at that, then they'll start to heal and they'll start to look outside of just your traditional medicine.
Yeah.
Now, some people do well on chemo. I have a girlfriend actually who did very well on that. But most of us, I believe, don't.
That's right. It depends on the type of cancer.
It depends
on
the
stage, the type of cancer.
Depends on the amount they give you.
Yeah.
I mean, did
There's
you
a
not
lot of variables.
test to test each chemotherapy agent?
Yeah, the chemosensitivity test.
Yes.
Absolutely. My last interview, we talked about that. That's the Greek test. It's called the Oncostat. I'll put a link below this video. The Oncostat test from RGCC Lab or whatever.
Right. They don't give that test out to people.
Right. Yeah. And they test, for anybody that doesn't know anything about it, they test your cancer. It's a blood test. They test your cancer against 50 different chemo drugs, like another 50 or 70 different natural anti-cancer compounds. There's a very robust genetic repair defect test that is included in that to see if you have any mutations. Yeah, it's a very valuable information. I mean, it's not a cheap test, but I mean, it could save your life.
I mean, if you choose to go that route,
right,
definitely have that test done, because then they'll come up with the types of therapies that will work with your body.
Without it, the doctors are literally just playing a guessing game.
They are.
They're just, we're going to try this chemo because
it's roulette.
Yeah, it's roulette. There's this particular chemo, a certain percentage of people respond to it, so we'll try it first.
Yeah.
See what happens.
Mm.
Yeah, I know. It's so frustrating. So frustrating.
Right. But I think, years ago I was gung-ho on being anti-everything. I was in my 20s, anti-everything. I knew the way. And, as I've matured and learned and, sort of studied more and spoken to more people, and I've realized that we've got to merge together. There is a way around this, and I think that for some people's personalities, the traditional route is fine. If they could complement that with diet and meditation and other things, changing their state and the things that you and I did, then that is fantastic. But, in one of Bernie Siegel's books, he says, there's 10 to 15% of us that when we're diagnosed with cancer, we just want to die.
Yeah.
We've already decided that we were going to get cancer, maybe in our subconscious mind, and, that this is it. I just want to die.
Yeah.
And then there's 60 to 70% of people that say, hey, doc, shoot me up, give me some drugs, just cut this thing out. I want it gone. And I trust whatever you do. And then there's the other percentage, which is you and I, where we questioned everything. And we went, hey, no, this is not for me. I'm going to find something else that I believe in. But it is a small minority of us.
That's right.
That choose that route.
That's absolutely right. I've seen it. I've experienced it. And again, hundreds and hundreds of people I've talked to. And I think anybody watching this, if you're trying to help someone else, if you're trying to help a loved one, you really do need to carefully consider the fact that maybe they do want to die. Maybe they're ready to die, and because some people are, they don't have a strong will to live. They're kind of ready to go. And it's hard to accept that.
It is hard.
But you don't want to drag someone along. Oh, you got to do this, you got to do that. Come on. If you're having to drag someone along to do, even if it's chemo or if it's some alternative stuff or it's juicing or whatever, if you're dragging them along and they're reluctant, that's a big red flag.
It really is, and I've seen this so often when I worked at the clinic for years, and in a clinic in Australia that I started. For example, you'd see the husband come in with all the vitamins and the stopwatch, and it would go off, and he'd give them on the hour to his wife, and say, oh, pay attention to Prue, and now we're going to go meditate, and we're going to do this. And she's like, okay, drag me along. And, I'd have to have those conversations with them. I'd have to sit them down and have a conversation.
Yeah.
And that was tricky.
Not a fun one.
Because no matter what he did, nothing was going to stop her from going where she needed to go.
Yeah.
So there's mindfulness coming up again. Whether you're healthy, whether you're sick, no matter what's going on in your world, this is the common denominator that we're all still learning. And it's funny because I really believe now, it's where the West met the East, Eastern philosophy.
Yeah.
It's very interesting. East meets West now, and we are meeting the Eastern philosophies and bringing them into our daily lives. And it's becoming so much more mainstream. There was nothing going on here 10 years ago, as you know, from when you were diagnosed. So it's really only just on the fringe of taking off now into middle America and mainstream America.
Well, word is spreading. The movement is growing, right? It's snowballing. So I'm excited. I mean, every little thing we do, every interview I do, everything, blog post somebody else does, or video they make, or whatever, we're all growing this wonderful message that your disease is not your fate, that you have options, that you can get well, that nutrition and natural therapies and your stress and emotional life all matter. And they can make the difference between life and death.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we're teaching kids this too now. We're teaching them yoga in school and a little bit about mindfulness. There's more that we can do there, of course. But I feel great about the younger generation coming up now. They're learning about vegetables, and Whole Foods is helping them too. And my neighbors are going to the garden down the road and getting organic vegetables and teaching their kids, how to eat properly. So I think that generation is going to be sort of the piece de resistance. We've got to help the rest of us. And I think, that 20 to 60-year-olds really, we're in trouble. We didn't eat right when we were younger. Yeah. We didn't know. I mean, I was fortunate. I did have my grandfather's garden when I grew up in New Zealand, and we had fresh vegetables. But we didn't understand the stresses and strains and all of the stuff that you and I have learned the hard way.
Yep.
And sometimes you've got to learn the hard way.
That's right.
To come out the other side.
And speaking of that, one of the many things I've learned the hard way is you want to help everybody, but like you mentioned earlier, there's only a small percentage of people that we can help.
Yes.
There's a percentage of people that no one can help. There's a large percentage of people in the middle that really only want to do what the doctor says, and they want the minimal effective dose. Give me the pill, give me the whatever, and they don't want to change their life. And then there's that other small 5 or 10% on the other end that are willing to do whatever it takes to get well. And those are the people we serve.
Yes, I've got something on my website that said, don't be a wimp. I mean, wimps need not apply. Seriously, you've really, really got to participate.
Yeah.
And be willing to participate. Otherwise, you and I can't help people.
Yep.
This is not a magic pill. This is kind of a complex situation.
It's a total life change.
It's a total life change, and it's not for everybody.
That's right. But you've got to have some mental toughness.
Absolutely.
That's where it starts. The battle, and I've said this many times, but cancer is not a battle in the body. It's a battle in the mind.
Yeah.
It's a battle in the mind. That's where it starts.
It does.
You got to win that. If you can win that, then the body will take care of it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's all about the mind over the body.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well,
this has been great.
Prue, this has been so great. I'm excited to share this. Tell for people that are watching, how can they reach you? How can they get in touch with you? And just briefly talk about what you do now.
Well, I've got a website up now, actually just as of a couple of weeks ago. It's called PrudenceSinclair.com.
Okay.
Love your medicine.
Okay.
So basically, what I'm talking about is choose your medicine and love your medicine, no matter what it is, whether it's traditional, complementary, just vegan foods, whatever you choose. Just learn to love it and truly believe in it, and then just watch for miracles. Because I tell you, there are miracles that will just turn up in your life, and you'll go, "Huh? How did that happen?" You've been there.
Absolutely, and I'm looking forward to more. I love miracles.
Me too. And
Yeah.
We create our destiny, and this is something that is huge. And when you realize that, you have passion like you and I do about life. I just wake up every morning and I'm just passionate. I'm passionate about what I do. And I know I've found my life purpose. And it is a tremendous feeling.
Yeah. And if you don't feel that way, you need to change something.
Something's got to, help. Get some help. Because it's a rush. It's a rush of joy. It's a rush of love. But I just like to quickly mention my foundation, which I've opened up. And basically, when I got sick, my workmates and friends from Perth, Australia, got together without me knowing, and they called me at the clinic to say they'd had a silent auction, and they had raised thousands and thousands of dollars for my care. And I still get tears in my eyes today because it helped me have my choice of medicine. Helped me go back to the clinic a second time, which was really, really worthwhile. So I've started this Love Your Medicine Foundation, and that's what we're all about. I'm asking doctors, whether they're alternative doctors, integrative doctors, functional doctors, whatever they're studying, massage therapists, anyone in the alternative route or complementary route, to donate their time to one patient a year, so that people that need to go this way, that don't have the funds, can go and seek help, whether it's through Skype, whether it's, you'll see it on my website, Love Your Medicine Foundation. And then also a donation page as well for people that, that maybe this holiday you want to tithe something good. Give us a $25 donation or something on the website so we can help people get a health coach, go for a massage, have a Reiki session, see the doctor of their choice, because this is not covered under healthcare.
Right.
And, it probably never will. And that's fine. We have to find the money to treat ourselves well. We come first. And I try to say this to people. What do you spend your money on? If you don't have your health, you have absolutely nothing.
Health is more valuable than wealth, and that's so wonderful that you're doing that. And it's neat to see how many foundations are popping up like yours to serve people who need help getting well. Who need help healing with medical expenses, with food, with groceries. It's so wonderful. So
it is.
Kudos to you. That's terrific.
Thank you. And I'd like to see us do some walks, not for chemotherapy, but for this type of care, so people have the choice.
Absolutely.
We're getting there.
We're getting there. One step at a time, one video at a time.
It's been over 25 years now. So.
Well, Prudence, it's an honor to know you. Thank you for taking your time to do this interview. For everybody watching, please share this. Share this with people you care about. Share it on social media. Help us spread this wonderful message of healing. Again, it's 1984, so that's 30 years. I said 25 years in the beginning of your...
30 years
You got to
now.
update your bio. Her bio said 25 years. It's 5 years old.
Wow.
Anyway, all right. Thanks for watching, everybody. Subscribe to my channel. See ya.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.